Kia ora YouTube. I was really stoked with the engagement of my last video. I thought it was just going to kind of be like a trauma dump, and when I saw that it was 30 minutes long, I was like, there's no way anyone is going to actually sit through this whole video. But lo and behold, it resonated with a bunch of you and actually finally got me over 500 subs. So I thought that rather than just replying to all of the comments, I would actually answer some questions and reflect on some of the points other people had made. Seems that this is such a similar situation, and a lot of people with ADHD are surprised to find it out.
Rip and tear until it is done.
You see, like up until the diagnosis of having ADHD, a lot of people, myself included, are living in this like private hell where you kind of feel like a bit of an outsider. You don't really fit in that well, but you're very good at potentially hiding it. So it's like this uniquely isolated situation. But then as soon as you just start voicing it and you find out about other people with ADHD, you find out it's not unique at all. So that's why I think that video resonated with so many people. So in this video, I am going to be answering some questions about nutrition, as well as the side effects of medication and people's concerns. I just want you to know that I am answering from an anecdotal place. I am an expert strength coach, but I am by no means a doctor when it comes to ADHD. I'm just relating my story to you, and if there's any points that overlap and make sense to you, hopefully you get some takeaways from this. But don't take my word as gospel, because it isn't a one size fits all. And like I said, I know friends that are far different to me in how they are handling their ADHD. But let's start off with something simple in my wheelhouse, which is from Sean the Spartan, and he asked whether or not I had looked into a low carbohydrate, maybe keto, carnivore diet to help with ADHD symptoms. And I find this a really interesting question because this relates to an observation I had made in my life way before diagnosis, right? So before I was even medicated for ADHD, I realized that eggs were like magical to me. Like I was at my best when I was eating lots of eggs, right? So when I was a bigger, pre losing all the weight from the medication, I would eat like 6 to 8 eggs every day for breakfast. There was no worries at all. And it actually made me feel really good, right? I always put it down to like eggs being full of, is it choline that's in eggs? I always put it down to like the choline in the eggs, obviously the cholesterol, and like all the effects that saturated fats have on my testosterone levels. I'm a gym bro. Everything to me is like, what's it doing for my testosterone? So even prior to medication, I had definitely figured out that there is a big correlation between me eating more saturated fats and feeling good, like mentally and emotionally, rather than any diet that like limits fat. As a gym bro, I always put it down to what saturated fats do for like my testosterone levels, right? So like I said, I had put together the fact that eating like good cuts of steak and eggs made me feel better. I never really thought about it from like a brain perspective. It was always from like a hormonal perspective. Now that I look at my brain with ADHD as almost being like under constant assault, I realize that all these essential good fats really go a long way in maintaining brain health. And that's across the board for non-ADHD people. But when it comes to having ADHD, I think there is some benefits in keeping your fats as high as possible. I take like 3 times the RDA for omega-3s to keep my omega-3s in check. And I still eat as many eggs as I can, although they've gotten quite expensive. And I don't shy away from fattier cuts of meat. I don't eat chicken that often, like I will, but I'll take like a slightly fattier steak every day of the week, and it makes me feel better. There is some evidence for higher fat diets regulating ADHD symptoms, as well as like higher carbohydrate diets exacerbating symptoms. However, when it comes to something like a ketogenic diet or even the carnivore diet, which I'd argue is just keto even taken further, for me, it's personally not worth it, right? As a person who focuses on performance when it comes to fitness, it is undeniable the power of carbohydrates for me. I metabolize carbs very well. So for me to perform well in the gym, build the most amount of strength, I got to keep my carbs high. If I cut them out, my performance tanks as well. So what this has ended up looking for me is I essentially would like carb cycle. For training days, I keep my carbohydrates as high as possible. And then for non-training days, I keep my fats quite high. This isn't anything that I'm really tracking. It's just naturally how I end up eating. I don't have like a table with like my macros all set up and calculating blah, blah, blah. It's just, I naturally gravitate more towards eating a higher fat diet of like good saturated healthy fats on non-training days, because that's also where my palate takes me. And then on the training days, I'm aware that if I do not have enough carbohydrates in me, my training is going to suck. So I try to keep my carbs nice and high. So yeah, I cycle between the two. So there's a long-winded ramble about nutrition. I do think that diet is very personal. And for some people, ketogenic or even carnivore might work. It doesn't for me. And I think you can still get the benefits from a higher fat diet without completely sacrificing what I would argue is the most efficient form of energy, being carbohydrates. I also had to laugh at this. It says there will be timestamps in the description. There are no timestamps. And I answered that like, it's classic ADHD. Like I had all the good intentions and then just ran out of dopamine when I had finally edited and put out the video. Like I was done. I had nothing left. But I did go back and put in the timestamps. I found this one very interesting. So I've never thought that ADHD is connected with lifting. Most ADHDers I know can't get into a sports routine. And I don't think that those two things are necessarily the same. I do think a lot of people with ADHD, myself included, struggle with sports because most sports have like a team element to it. And when it comes to a team element, you aren't always the center of attention, right? You have to work as a team, so you have to like step back, let other people go forwards. And when it comes to exercise and ADHD, like you're kind of craving constant stimulation. So many of us lack the patience to play team sports. I personally have always been active even before lifting, but it's always been solo sports. So I was big into martial arts when I was younger, and then kickboxing as I got older, and now lifting weights. It's always just been me, right? It's all about focusing just on my brain. I don't have to worry about anyone else. So yeah, I don't think those two things are necessarily the same. I don't think ADHD people are necessarily bad at sport. I just think that they probably are more biased towards individual sports. Again, this is just completely anecdotal. I have no idea. Another thing is, I would say you find most of the ADHD lifters in strength sports, because like there is a level of patience and monotony that comes with bodybuilding and like planning that most of us aren't capable of maintaining. Whereas like going full send on a lift, different story altogether, right? And of course, this always resonates. Like it's been so draining watching everything snowball. And the amount of these comments are always interesting. Like I actually just got diagnosed. I've been watching everything snowball. I've always been told I have a high IQ and I'm an underachiever. It's like, this is a shared experience, so don't be afraid to talk about it. It's not all social media sometimes, especially at the moment, like there is almost like a cool factor to ADHD. And I think a lot of times it ignores the overarching like deepness, the weight, the burden that is on people, especially with a late diagnosis. It's not all cute, like, ha ha ha, look at these funny things I do because of ADHD. There is a lot of like deep reflection that comes after it. And I think the reason that last video resonated with people is because they related so much to that burden happening. So yeah, if you got anything out of it, my inbox is always open. Send me a message. I'm by no means an expert. I'm also just someone figuring my way out. I just happen to be in an interesting situation where, because I've like been in the fitness industry for so long, and parts of that has always been about optimizing performance. There's been little aspects of my life that I've managed to try to like treat like a strength training program, not realizing that they were all workarounds for ADHD that's in the gym and outside of the gym. And for me, my diagnosis was really good for me accepting that the what I'm trying to do, the ways I try to live my life, isn't because I'm doing anything wrong. It's just that my brain is different to other people. So it won't make sense to them, but it's perfectly fine for me to implement weird ways of like staying on top of things, getting stuff done, organizing stuff. So it's like you're in my head, man. Yeah, that's exactly it. We all think that this is like the solo experience, but there's many of us, right? Many of us with this late diagnosis that have gone through the exact same whiplash, perspective altering moment of our lives that diagnosis has, that bombshell that just like inceptions your brain and rearranges everything. It's like a really good twist in a movie where it's like, this whole time, here's the villain no one saw. This is an interesting one, right? I was scared going back on meds, partly because I'm afraid of taking it and instantly having a heart attack, or just having no energy in the gym. One of the interesting things about ADHD is like stimulants having a subduing effect on you. So if you become overstimulated, it can make you quite lethargic, it can make you quite tired. That's why you see all the time people with ADHD being able to drink coffee and go to bed. I am not one of those people. And if you're finding your dose is subduing you to the level that you have no energy in the gym, you might be on too high of a dose. This happens to me sometimes if I'm irresponsible with medicating myself whilst also drinking too much coffee. I'll have like a sleepy lull in the middle of the day, but it's an uncomfortable sleepy lull because you wouldn't be able to sleep in it. I just feel like lethargic. But in regards to like having a heart attack, yeah, just watch your dose, man. Like if you have ADHD, you shouldn't be having the overstimulated heart palpitations. I don't. Some people, some meds do have that effect on some people. So I would definitely spend the time in figuring out what is the best medication for you to stop anything like that happen. And also like titrating your dose up. So making sure that you don't go balls to the wall right from the beginning. Again, talk to your doctor. But I have never worried about my meds' effect on my heart. Because prior to ADHD, I was drinking like an ungodly amount of caffeine. And if anything was going to kill me, it was going to be that. So I think having a medicated dose of like, this is 20 milligrams of methamphetamine in my case, is better than this is 300 to 400 milligrams of caffeine. I don't actually know what it is. I'm just ingesting it, and the label on this pre-workout says it's supposed to be that, but each to their own, man. Yeah, recently diagnosed at 42. So much of this makes sense. Haven't got started on medication yet, but I can really imagine the part about you starting meds and realizing how easy normal people have had it and achieved so little. Yeah, that's my little arrogance that I probably shouldn't voice out loud, but it's definitely a thought. When you're on the even playing field, you do realize like, yeah, there are normal things that will stop you from achieving your goals, but it's definitely a massive barrier we're all going through. I've always had big ambitions and a higher IQ, but get completely screwed over by the now unmedicated, undiagnosed ADHD. Very, very normal. Yeah, like I said, I've owned a gym before. I'm owning a gym for the second time in my life, and I'm doing far better this time than I was last time. I thought this was a really good question. I would love to hear more about the two versions of yourself that the meds create. I'm definitely worried about the side effects and would love to hear more of your thoughts. Yeah, this is going to be a bit of an interesting one. But upon initially getting medicated, I was really excited about my ability to focus and get stuff done, right? Like I was like, boom, boom, boom. I could get everything done. I was starting the business. There were way less roadblocks, right? So that went on for months. And I was just like, nothing's changed. Absolutely nothing's changed. What I hadn't realized is one of my ways of staying stimulated when I'm unmedicated is like through humor. I'm quite quick-witted and like I'm fun, I'm bubbly, and it's kind of to keep myself entertained. Like I would, like Sophie would joke that like I make jokes just to entertain myself, and it was 100% true. That's what I was doing, but it gave me like an air of being quite fun. I was very good at distracting myself, right? Keeping the ball rolling. Whilst being medicated, I don't need to do that anymore, and I am aware that I have less of a sense of humor. I feel far more serious. Isn't in like a depressing kind of way. Like I'm not personalityless, which is probably how you would interpret like I have less of a sense of humor. I just don't chase a laugh as much as I would. Like I will still find the same stuff funny. I'm just not going out of my way to amuse myself constantly. So to me, this is a perfectly reasonable sacrifice between being medicated and unmedicated, because it does allow me to stay on task and get stuff done. But it's also the reason why I like to be unmedicated in the weekends a lot of the time. I'm unmedicated right now, so if this is way more rambly, that's because of me just running off coffee today. But it is a completely reasonable sacrifice for me to get my life together. Right? It might not be as fun and exciting, but like I still make time for that old personality that I like. As I said, I am unmedicated on the weekends quite often, so I can just kind of potter around. But even still, that fun, laughing Damien that's easily distracted, it even does have an effect on fun. For instance, if I'm unmedicated, I will get analysis paralysis about like fun stuff I want to do. Like, do I want to illustrate? Do I want to play video games? And then I just won't do anything. So it's like the ADHD pendulum swings both ways, you know, like sure, my interactions, I might be more witty and laugh more, but it actually does affect even having fun because it's like I will procrastinate getting started doing something I love, which is absolutely wild. The one that does really worried me as a creative was the idea that it was going to take away my creativity, that the manic chaos of my unmedicated ADHD brain was what was bringing creative ideas into my head. And I am very stoked to say that it is not the case. I am just as creative as I was unmedicated whilst being medicated, and I would even argue that I can take ideas to a better like level of completion, even like in like an abstract sense, rather than having all this chaos that you're then trying to put into any creative project you're doing. I can formulate an idea and refine it and really get to the nitty-gritty of it and enjoy the entire process better because my brain feels like it is able to hone in on single ideas easier. So it did not have a negative effect on my creativity. I also got a question about whether going on and off meds, like I said, I don't medicate myself on the weekend. Sometimes I take 2, sometimes I take 1, causes me to go through withdrawals, and it does not. In fact, like it's one of those things that a lot of people laugh about because they're like, this is a controlled medication. What happens if you get addicted to it? You have ADHD, you're probably gonna forget to take your medication all the time. And just like with any other stimulant, you will find you build up a tolerance to it. So once in a while, it does pay to take like an entire week off in order to get the most out of your meds again. In saying that, with me cycling on and off it, like having weekends off, I only did this after being medicated for, I think it was almost an entire year. So yeah, but I recommend when you're still letting your brain like adapt to the rewiring that the ADHD meds do, don't cycle on and off with them. Listen to your psychiatrist, spend time adjusting to it. I took an entire year. And then once you learn how your brain works, it's easier to come on and off them. I don't face any withdrawals. Maybe some people do. Again, this is all anecdotal. I'm by no means an expert of this. I just want to again say thank you for engaging with that last video. It also does feel good for me to feel heard and not feel alone in all this. Thank you for the 500 subs. I will keep you up to date on this. As I said earlier, like I don't like being pigeonholed into just being like a gym guy, but I also don't want to be pigeonholed into just being a person that talks about ADHD. But if you like hanging out with me and like my perspective on things, I bring a lot of different views to strange things that appeal to me. So my content's forever changing, but there will be a coherent through line. If you haven't subscribed, why not do it? Like the video, and I will see you next time. Ciao.